Have you ever read one text that shattered 12 years of marriage in a single second? Because that's exactly what happened to me. My phone buzzed on my desk. Maddie, don't wait up tonight. No emoji, no warmth, just cold. And right then, that old gut feeling every man knows punched me straight in the chest. Before I could stop myself, I shot back. Hope you and Derek have fun. Her replies exploded instantly, rapid, panicked, back to back. I opened our location app, and there she was, not at a late meeting, but inside Blue Aspen Bistro, the place where I asked her to be my wife. If you want to hear the messages my wife flooded my phone with next, stay right here. Hit subscribe, follow along, and let's keep going. If you'd asked me a week before that text, I would have told you my life was solid. My name's Elias. I'm 42, an architect in Denver. I run a small studio downtown. Nothing glamorous, but mine. I drive past buildings and think, yeah, I helped bring that into the world. There's a quiet kind of pride in that. Out in Highlands Ranch, we had the standard suburban dream. 2-story house, decent yard, neighbors who wave but don't get too close. Morning coffee in a bright kitchen. Maddie reading emails. Me scrolling news, both of us pretending the silence was comfortable. She was the high flyer, corporate attorney on the partner track, sharp suits, sharper mind. Friends called us a power couple. We smiled, corrected them out loud, but secretly, we liked it. It felt like we'd done adulthood right. Career, house, marriage, boxes checked. I honestly believed I'd built something that would last, from the ground up, brick by brick. Long nights at the office, weekends sacrificed, all for this life. On paper, we were perfect. But paper doesn't show the cracks, and the first crack didn't show up in court or at work. It showed up in how we started, and how far we'd drifted from that. To understand why one cold text hit me like a truck, you have to understand how warm it used to be. I met Maddie in a cramped lecture hall in college, ethics class. The professor tossed out some theory about justice, clearly expecting everyone to nod along. Maddie raised her hand and dismantled him, calm, ruthless, almost surgical. The whole room laughed, then went quiet. I remember thinking, she's way out of my league, and I'm in trouble. We ended up in this greasy campus diner that night. Cheap coffee, bad lighting, cracked red booths. We talked about law, architecture, getting out of our small hometowns, not wanting to live average lives. They kicked us out at closing and we kept talking on the walk back. My ears were freezing. I didn't care. Those early years were broke and loud and stupid in the best way. Sharing $5 pizzas, fighting with my dying Honda, holding her on a futon that barely qualified as furniture. Every goodnight text felt like something to keep. Blue Aspen Bistro was our big moment. I proposed there, hands shaking, whole place clapping when she said yes. Back then, my phone lit up with "Can't wait to see you tonight" and "Love you." I had no idea that someday, that same screen would deliver the message that killed our marriage. Back when things were good, my phone used to light up with her. Little stuff. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Grab wine on your way home. Love you." Stupid, simple messages that didn't look like much. Until they were gone. Slowly, they turned into, "Running late. Don't wait up. Meeting went long." No emoji, no warmth, just calendar updates. It felt less like my wife was texting me and more like my assistant was. I told myself the story every husband tells to stay calm. Big M&A deal. Partner track. She's exhausted. Don't be needy. Be supportive. You're a grown man, not a teenager. But one night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I opened our message thread and started scrolling. A month back. 2 months. 3. The change was right there in black and white. Less "miss you," more "don't wait." It hit me that I couldn't remember the last time she texted me just to say she was thinking about me. Not about a meeting or a client or a schedule. Somewhere along the way, she'd checked out. And I'd been too blind or too scared to see it. And then came that "don't wait up" text, the one that finally forced my eyes open. The night she sent that last "don't wait up tonight," late client dinner. I did the opposite. I packed my bag at the office earlier than usual, told my team I was heading out, and stopped at the store on the way home. I grabbed everything for her favorite pasta: garlic, fresh basil, the good Parmesan, not the cheap stuff. Some part of me still believed a home-cooked meal could fix whatever I didn't want to name. When I walked into our bedroom to change, it hit me before I even turned on the light. A smell. Soft, floral, but heavier, muskier. Not the Chanel I'd given her on our 5th anniversary, the one she said smelled like us. I stood there breathing it in, feeling stupid arguing with perfume. People change scents all the time, I told myself. Don't be that guy. Don't be paranoid. But the thought came anyway. This doesn't smell like you trying something new. This smells like someone new. I took a long, hot shower, hoping steam and soap would wash it out of my head. It didn't. If anything, it got louder. That scent didn't just sit on her skin. It stuck in my mind. And when I stepped back out, dripping on the tile, I saw the next thing that would push me over the edge. Her iPad lit up on the nightstand. When I walked out of the shower, towel around my waist, the bedroom was dim except for one thing. Her iPad lit up on the nightstand. We'd never been the couple that snooped. That was always my brag, if I'm honest. I don't need to check her phone. We trust each other. I'd said that more times than I can count. I stood there for a second, water still dripping from my hair, arguing with myself. Put it down. Don't be that guy. But that gut feeling from earlier, it was back and louder. I picked it up. No passcode. Same as always. Her email was open. Contracts, newsletters, receipts, nothing juicy, nothing wrong, just Maddie being Maddie. I almost laughed at myself. See? You're paranoid. My thumb hovered over the home button, ready to set it back down exactly how I'd found it. That's when it slid across the top of the screen. A banner. New message. Derek Shaw. Looking forward to tonight. Same place. My chest clenched. Same place? There was only one place that phrase meant to me. And suddenly, I needed to know exactly where my wife really was that night. Same place. Those two words wouldn't stop echoing. I put the iPad down like it was something that could burn me and grabbed my phone instead. Years ago, Maddie and I had installed one of those family locator apps. Her idea, actually. For safety, she'd said. Running late, car trouble, all that. I opened it, half hoping the app was glitching, half hoping I was. Her little blue dot popped up on the map. Not downtown at her law office like she'd texted. Not anywhere near it. It was pinned over a familiar block. Zoom in. Street names sharpen. And there it was. Dead center. Blue Aspen Bistro. Our place. Where I'd knelt on one knee. Where she'd cried and said yes. Now my wife was there with a man whose name had just flashed across her screen. For a second I just stared, feeling my heartbeat in my teeth. Then something broke loose in me. My thumbs moved before my brain caught up. Hope you and Derek enjoy dinner. Send. Within seconds, the 3 dots popped up. Typing. Gone. Back again. Message after message started rolling in, and every new bubble told me one thing loud and clear. She was panicking. In the exact place where she once said yes to spending her life with me. Her texts started firing in one after another. What are you talking about? Elias, answer me. Then, I'm coming home now. I stared at those words. From her office downtown to our place in Highlands Ranch, 40 minutes on a good night. From Blue Aspen Bistro to our house, 15, maybe 20 with lights. I looked at the clock. Then I just waited. You learn a lot about a person in those minutes between I'm on my way and the sound of the garage door. 17 minutes later, I heard it. That low mechanical grind, the garage door rolling up. Not 40, not even close. She walked into the kitchen still in her suit. Not the gray one I'd seen 100 times, but something new. Dark, sharp, expensive. Makeup heavier than usual, lipstick a deeper red. The same new perfume I'd smelled in our bedroom clung to her like a confession. She dropped her keys on the counter like it was any other night. Hey, she said, too controlled. What was that text about? And all I could think was, she didn't rush home from work. She rushed home from him. and I was done pretending not to see it. She stayed in the doorway for a second, sizing me up like I was a witness she had to manage. "What was that text about?" Same tone she probably used in depositions. I didn't bother easing into it. "You weren't at the office," I said. A tiny flicker crossed her face, eyes tightening, blink a fraction too slow. Then she slipped straight into her story. "I was having dinner with clients," she said. "At Blue Aspen. The merger? Derek was there. You know how these things go. Late night, lots of negotiation." It was almost impressive how fast she built the narrative. But I'd already seen the blue dot. I'd already done the math. "Right," I said. "So why'd you say late client dinner instead of I'm at Blue Aspen with Derek?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she pivoted. "Why are you tracking me, Elias? Why are you going through my stuff? Do you hear yourself? This is insane. You're acting insecure, paranoid." And that was it. The switch flipped for me. I wasn't talking to my wife anymore. I was talking to a defense attorney. "The only thing you're upset about," I said, voice shaking but low, "is that I checked, not that you lied." And in that moment, something in me cracked in a way I knew I couldn't tape back together. After that line, "The only thing you're upset about is that I checked, not that you lied," she didn't back down. She doubled down. "Oh, so now I'm on trial?" she snapped. "This is your jealousy talking, your trust issues. You've always been like this, Elias, in your head, making up stories. Funny how fast we becomes you when someone's cornered." The argument went in circles. Every time I brought up what I'd seen, the text from Derek, the location at Blue Aspen, she dragged it back to my supposed insecurity, my overreaction, my need for control. At some point, I just went quiet. Not because she was right, because I realized nothing I said was going to matter. I looked around the kitchen we'd renovated together last year, the backsplash we fought over, the island we'd picked out on a sleepy Sunday. It didn't look like our dream home anymore. It looked like a crime scene. "I'm going to a hotel," I said finally. "Just for tonight. I need space to think." Her eyes went cold. "If you walk out that door, you're the one destroying this marriage, not me." I wheeled my suitcase past her anyway. For the first time in 12 years, our bed would be half empty, and I was the one who chose that. I checked into the Curtis downtown with a small suitcase and a big hole in my chest. The room was standard business travel beige. King bed, desk, TV mounted on the wall. I dropped my bag, stood by the window, and looked out over Denver. City lights, traffic moving, people living their normal lives. Mine didn't feel normal anymore. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, Maddie's name over and over. First it was anger. "You're being insane. Come home so we can talk like adults." Then guilt. "I can't believe you just leave like that." Then softer. "Please, Elias, come back. We can fix this." I didn't answer any of it. I just sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, feeling like my head was splitting in two. One voice said, "You're overreacting. Go home. Work it out. Everybody has rough patches." The other said, "You saw what you saw. Stop gaslighting yourself." At some point, I picked up my laptop. I used to open that thing to design buildings. That night, I opened it for something else. I started to design a case, not against a client, against my own marriage. Once you decide you're going to investigate your own wife, there's no clean way to do it. I started with the one thing I already knew, that stupid family locator app. We'd put it on our phones years ago, for safety, car trouble, late nights, all that grown-up responsible crap. I'd only ever used it to see if she was close so I could time dinner. That night in the hotel, I opened the history. 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I dragged the timeline back and watched the little blue dots stack up. The app we installed to protect each other was now the thing showing me every place she'd gone to break us. Blue Aspen Bistro wasn't a one-off. It was there again. And again. Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, a random Sunday. Then another location kept repeating. A tower downtown I recognized from the skyline. The Confluence. Luxury apartments, floor-to-ceiling glass. Not exactly a place you swing by for work at 11:30 p.m. I looked at the timestamps, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m., 11 to 2, midnight to nearly 3. Late at the office, she'd said. I'm an architect. When something doesn't make sense, I put it into a pattern. I opened Excel and started plugging in dates, times, locations, watching lines and clusters appear. It didn't look like random late nights. It looked like a second life, and I needed to see it with my own eyes. The next day, I rented a car that wasn't mine. Petty, maybe, but I didn't want Maddie seeing my SUV pop up anywhere near downtown and spinning another story. I drove to the confluence and parked across the street, close enough to see the entrance, far enough to feel pathetic. I never thought I'd be that guy. Sitting in a car with cold coffee, watching a lobby door, heart jumping every time it opened. Every woman who walked in made my chest tighten for a second. Blonde hair, dark coat, work bag, was that her? Wrong stride, wrong jacket, too tall, too short, not her. I kept checking the time against the pattern I'd seen on that spreadsheet. If this was one of their nights, she should have been here. She wasn't. But about an hour in, I saw him. Derek Shaw. I recognized him from firm events. Different suit, no tie, gym bag slung over his shoulder. He walked out of the building like he'd done it 1,000 times. Comfortable. At home. I didn't catch them together that day. No smoking gun kiss. No hand in hand. Somehow that made it worse. It meant this wasn't some drunk one-time mistake. It meant whatever was happening had a schedule. Driving away from the confluence, I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. But I also knew something else. I was out of my depth. I could read floor plans and city zoning codes. I couldn't read my own wife anymore. So I called someone who made a living reading people. Calling Caleb felt like crossing a line, but the real line had already been crossed by someone else. Caleb? It's Elias. We hadn't talked in a while. College feels like another lifetime when you're in your 40s. Back then, we crammed for exams and argued about music. Now he tracks cheating spouses and missing assets for a living. Calling Caleb felt like crossing a line. But the real line had already been crossed by someone else. I told him everything. The texts, the app, Blue Aspen, the confluence, Derek. Saying it out loud felt like throwing up. This was my perfect marriage I'd bragged about at reunions. The one I'd held up as proof that good guys didn't always finish last. Caleb didn't laugh. He didn't sound surprised. You'd be amazed how often I hear this, man, he said, voice flat but not unkind. We met later that day at his small office near downtown. No nonsense. Desk, files, coffee machine that had seen better days. I handed him printouts, location history, Derek's full name, Maddie's firm. He shuffled through it, then looked up. Give me 48 hours, he said. We'll see what's really going on. 48 hours. 2 days that suddenly felt like a lifetime. Waiting for bad news feels a lot like waiting for test results. You keep pretending you're fine until your stomach reminds you you're not. I went back to my studio and tried to be Elias the architect again. Projects, deadlines, budgets, real life. I sat in front of a half-finished elevation drawing and stared at it like it was in another language. My assistant Riley knocked on the open door. You okay? You've been off all week. Family stuff, I said. 2 useless words that cover everything and explain nothing. I kept my phone face up on the desk. Every buzz made my heart jump. Emails from clients, spam, calendar reminders. Every time I saw it wasn't Caleb, my chest loosened and tightened at the same time. In my head, there were only 2 channels playing on loop. Channel 1, Maddie's innocent. The app glitched. The texts meant nothing. Derek's just a coworker. If that was true, I'd have to face the fact that I'd hired a PI to follow my own wife for no reason. Channel 2. I was right. She was cheating. The patterns, the restaurant, the tower, exactly what they looked like. If that was true, the marriage I'd built my whole adult life around was already over. It just hadn't signed the paperwork yet. Either I was paranoid or I was right, and both would cost me my marriage. So I sat there pretending to work, waiting for a phone call that I knew would hurt no matter what it said. On the second morning, the email finally came. We need to talk. Come by my office. No details, no smiley, just that. My stomach dropped in a way that already told me the answer, but I drove over anyway. His office looked the same as before, plain, quiet, blinds half closed. The only new thing was a thick manila envelope sitting dead center on his desk. Caleb didn't crack a joke, didn't small talk. He just looked at me for a second and said, "You sure you're ready for this?" There's no honest way to answer that. I said nothing. He slid the envelope across. When a PI says, "You need to sit down," you don't argue. You obey. I opened it. The first photo was Maddie and Derek walking into Blue Aspen together, side by side, too close for just coworkers. Her head tilted toward him in that way I used to be proud of. Next shot, them at a corner table, our old table, wine glasses, candle between them. Her smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Then one with their hands touching across the table, fingers intertwined, familiarity, not accident. The last photo was in the parking lot, his hand on the back of her neck, her body pressed full against his, their mouths locked. Whatever doubt I had left died in that frame. And Caleb wasn't done yet. The photos alone could have ended the conversation. But Caleb kept going. He pulled out a stack of printed statements. I thought this was the part where things would start making sense. Instead, it was the part everything stopped making excuses. "These are her credit card charges," he said. "Downtown hotels, late check-ins, early checkouts. All on nights she told you she was buried at the office. Room numbers, dates, charges for 2 breakfasts when she'd told me she'd skipped dinner." Then he laid down another sheet. A reservation confirmation. Cabin in Estes Park. Weekend coming up. Booked in Derek Shaw's name. "For 2 guests," Caleb added, like the page didn't already scream it. I felt like I was watching someone else's life implode. Some idiot on a podcast, not me. The guy listening and thinking, I'd never let it get that far. Finally, Caleb reached into a small drawer and set a clear evidence bag on the desk. Inside was a man's watch. Vintage Omega. Worn leather strap. Initials DS engraved on the back. "Found it under the passenger seat of her car," he said. "Must have slipped off at some point." I stared at it for a long time. "So he wasn't just in my restaurant," I finally said. My voice sounded flat, unfamiliar. "He was in my car, in my wife." Back at the hotel, I laid everything out on the bed like evidence in a trial. Photos, statements, the cabin reservation, the watch in its little plastic bag, all the things I never imagined I'd have to collect about my own wife. My hands were shaking when I called her, but my voice came out weirdly calm. She answered on the second ring. "Elias? Finally. Are you done being dramatic?" "Maddie," I said, "we're past dramatic." I started slow. Blue Aspen, multiple nights. She cut in fast. "Client dinners, I told you that. The Confluence Apartments, 11 p.m. to 2 in the morning. Strategy meetings. You have no idea how my job works." Her instinct was to argue, not to pause, not to ask why I was asking, so I stopped giving her room to spin. "Photos of you and Derek at our table," I said. "Hands on each other. You kissing in the parking lot." Silence. Just breathing. "Hotel charges. A cabin in Estes Park, for 2. More silence. Heavier now. Then I went for the last piece. "And Caleb found a vintage Omega in your car, leather strap, DS on the back." This time the silence wasn't empty. It was admission. "I have proof, Maddie," I said quietly. "I'm not crazy. I'm your husband, and you cheated on me." I didn't know it yet, but that call was the moment Maddie's mask finally cracked. The first words out of her mouth weren't what you'd expect from someone who just got caught. Not "I'm sorry," not "it's not what you think," not even "can we talk?" Instead she snapped, "You had me followed? You went through my private stuff? How dare you?" There it was. Not heartbreak, not regret. Outrage at being exposed. "You invaded my privacy, Elias," she went on, voice climbing. "Tracking me? Digging through my life? Do you hear how insane that sounds?" "I tracked my wife," I said. "Not a stranger." "You hired a PI," she shot back. "Do you have any idea how violating that is?" I let her rant, let her pile words on top of words. The longer she talked, the clearer it got. She was more afraid of losing control of the story than losing me. You haven't said you didn't do it, I finally cut in. Not once. On the other end, just breathing again. Fast. Uneven. I'm not coming home tonight, I said. Maybe not ever. A beat. Then, cold as ice. If you walk away, she said, that's on you. I hung up. Sat there on the edge of the hotel bed, fingers still gripping the photos. And for the first time, I realized this might not end with an argument. It might end with a lawyer. I had no idea. That would be the last time Maddie spoke to me like someone who still believed we had a future. The morning after that call, I woke up in the hotel feeling like I'd been in a bar fight I didn't remember. My first meeting of the day wasn't with a client. It was with a divorce attorney. Thomas Avery's office was in one of those older brick buildings downtown. Nothing flashy, shelves full of thick books no one actually reads anymore. He'd been recommended by a friend who'd whispered his number like it was contraband. I laid the folder on his desk. Photos, statements, logs. All the ways my marriage had failed, printed on office paper. He flipped through everything slowly, face unreadable. Do you have a prenup? He asked. No, I said. We got married when we had nothing. He nodded. Colorado's basically a 50-50 state. Anything acquired during the marriage, we're probably splitting. The affair might help in negotiations, but it's not a magic bullet. I don't care about the money, I said. I just want my life back. He looked up at me in a way that made me feel stupid and seen at the same time. You should care, he said, because when this is over, your life is going to look very different, and you're going to need something to stand on. I glanced down at my hand. Her ring was still there. I didn't know it yet, but I was already living like I was on my own. And I didn't realize, in just a few days, Maddie would ask to see me one last time, and I wouldn't be there. A week later, I moved out of the Curtis and into a small furnished place in Lohi. Month-to-month lease, neutral space, no history. I picked that neighborhood on purpose, close enough to my studio, far enough from Highlands Ranch, and just out of Maddie's usual orbit. I didn't want her tracking my SUV and showing up at my door with another speech ready. I told my team I'd be working from home for a while, family stuff, and buried myself in a big mixed-use project we'd been chasing. Lines, measurements, load calculations, things that made sense, things that stayed where you put them. My phone kept lighting up with her name. At first, you're overreacting. We can fix this if you stop being stubborn. Then, please, Elias, talk to me. 12 years can't end like this. Then the blame phase. You pushed me away for years. If you'd paid more attention, this wouldn't have happened. I didn't respond. I just read them like weather reports. Not to engage, just to see what storm she was in that day. Every morning I woke up alone in that strange bed. There was this split second where I'd reach out my hand expecting her. Then I'd remember. And there'd be this sharp little stab of grief, followed by something else. Relief. I realized I didn't actually miss the woman who'd been lying next to me the last few months. I missed the woman I thought she was, not the one she'd shown me she could be. What I didn't know was that this strange sense of peace would become the wound that haunted me the most. When you first catch someone cheating, your brain wants one clean villain and one clean victim. It's easier that way. But alone in that little low-high apartment, with too much quiet and not enough sleep, my mind kept rewinding the last 12 years like a bad home movie. Our wedding. Her walking down the aisle, jaw set like she'd decided to win at marriage the way she won at everything else. The honeymoon. Good, messy, loud. 2 kids playing house in a nicer bed. The fights. Most of them small, about money, time, my late nights at the studio, her late nights at the firm. The pattern was always the same. She pushed, I folded. I said, you're right, even when I didn't feel it, just to get us back to neutral. Then the big one. When my dad died, I fell apart a little, took time off, stared at walls. She gave me about a week before asking how long I planned on sitting in it. Back then, I told myself she was just being practical. Now, I wasn't so sure. I started asking myself a question I really didn't like. Did she ever truly love me? Or did I just fit the picture she wanted? Maybe this affair didn't break my marriage. Maybe it just exposed what was already cracked. and once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. And I had no idea that meeting she asked for would be the last time I ever saw Maddie alive. A few days into that weird half-life, half married on paper, half single in reality, an email from Maddie showed up in my inbox. Subject line, no subject. Body, can we meet? Just to talk, no lawyers. Just one line, no accusations, no love bomb, no 12-paragraph monologue like her texts. I stared at it longer than I'd like to admit. Part of me said, don't do it. She'll twist everything. You've seen who she is now. Another part, the stupid, softer part, wanted something. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just a real I'm sorry. One that wasn't half attack, half excuse. I typed back one word. When? Her reply came almost instantly, like she'd been waiting with the draft open. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Starbucks, Larimer Square. Neutral territory, public place. Harder to scream, easier to walk away. I sat there, finger hovering over my trackpad, then finally wrote, okay. But I made myself a promise right then. I wasn't going there to save my marriage. I was going to bury it properly. Whatever she said at that table wasn't going to change the fact that she'd taken a wrecking ball to the life we built. At least, that's what I told myself when I walked in. I got to the Starbucks at Larimer Square 20 minutes early, because that's what men like me do when we're bracing for impact. I picked a table in the corner, backs to the wall, and ordered 2 drinks without thinking. My regular black coffee, and a vanilla latte, extra shot, no foam, hers. When Maddie walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, it took me a second to recognize her. She looked smaller somehow. No suit, no heels, jeans, sneakers, a plain sweater, no makeup, just dark circles under her eyes. Her wedding ring still on. She sat down across from me, hands wrapped around herself like she was cold. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. I pushed the latte toward her. Same as always. Something flickered in her face. A memory, a softer time. It disappeared just as fast. Before we start, I said, I need you to understand something. If you lie to me once tonight, I walk out. I don't care what the excuse is. She nodded slowly, staring into the foam like she wanted to drown in it. Then she took a breath that sounded like it scraped her ribs on the way out. I was having an affair with Derek, she said. No spin, no delay, just the bullet. Not whispered, not excused. Said, like ripping a bandage off a wound I didn't know was still bleeding. I didn't say anything, didn't move. I just sat there, letting the truth settle like dust after an explosion. After someone finally says the words out loud, the world doesn't explode. It just gets very, very quiet. How long? I asked. 3 months, she said. It started after one of those late nights on the Westcott merger. We were both exhausted, stressed. It just happened. That phrase, it just happened. Like she'd tripped and fallen into his bed. She kept talking. It was exciting, she admitted. New, different. I'd go home to us, to the same conversations, the same routines, bills, schedules, groceries. With him it felt, she searched for the word, alive. I didn't say anything, didn't trust my voice. I felt stuck, she went on. At work, at home, like everything was just predictable. I know that's not fair to you. You didn't do anything wrong, she shook her head. She shook. I wanted a break from being the responsible one all the time. What I heard wasn't her carefully chosen sentences. What I heard was one ugly translation. You weren't enough. The life you built wasn't enough. So let me get this straight, I said finally. I was the safe option, the mortgage, the stability, and when you wanted fun, you picked him. She flinched. Didn't deny it. She called it an escape. All I could see was that she'd used the life we built together as a prison she needed to sneak out of. After she finished explaining why she blew our life up, the energy at the table shifted. Maddie reached into her bag and slid a folded sheet of paper toward me. I need you to see this, she said. It was a printed email. Her resignation letter. effective immediately, walking away from the firm she'd bled for since law school. "I sent it this morning," she said. "I can't work with him. I can't stay there and say I'm trying to save this." Before I could respond, she kept going. "I also booked a marriage counselor next week. If you're willing to come." She swallowed. "And I told my parents everything. About Derek. About us. They're furious with me. They're disappointed. They still love you, by the way. They said they'd understand if you never spoke to me again." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, the way she always hated doing. "If we have to move, I'll move. I'll change jobs. I'll take a pay cut. Whatever it takes. I love you, Elias. I never stopped. I was stupid. I was selfish. But I never stopped loving you." For the first time since this started, she actually cried. No performance. Just raw, ugly crying. She was saying all the right things, but right things don't erase wrong choices. And I still had no idea if anything she did now could make me unsee those photos. After that, we ran out of words. We just sat there in that Starbucks, surrounded by people typing on laptops and pretending their lives weren't falling apart. The milk steamer hissed, cups clinked, somebody laughed too loud at something on their phone. Between us, the resignation letter lay on the table like a white flag. Part of me wanted to reach across, wipe her face, tell her we'd figure it out, that 12 years meant more than 3 months of stupid, reckless choices. Another part wanted to stand up, walk out, and never see her again outside of a courtroom. "I can't decide this in a coffee shop," I finally said. My voice sounded like it belonged to somebody older. She nodded, staring at her hands. "I know. I'm not asking for an answer tonight." She paused. "I'll be at the house. I won't push. If you want to talk, you know where I am." For once there was no threat, no manipulation, just waiting. I stood up, slipped my jacket on, and left without touching her. Outside, Larimer Square was strung with warm lights, couples strolling, tourists taking pictures. It should have looked romantic. It just made everything feel cheaper. For the first time since this started, it hit me. The decision was mine now, not hers, not the lawyers, not the PI's. Mine. And whichever way I chose, there was no version of this where I walked away untouched. A couple days after the Starbucks meeting, I sat back in Thomas's office with a legal pad in front of me like we were planning a project instead of my life. I told him about Maddie's resignation, the counseling appointment, the promises to move, to start over. I even slid the letter across his desk like it might change the math. He listened, then leaned back. "There is a middle road," he said. "If you decide to reconcile, we can do a post-nup. Spell things out. Protect your assets. Lay out what happens if she ever does this again." So he walked me through it. What we could lock down. What we couldn't. How to rebuild on paper what had already collapsed in reality. "And the other road?" I asked, even though I already knew. "We continue with the divorce," he said, as we started. I left his office with 2 clear options and 1 ugly truth. In neither of them did trust magically come back. I pictured 5, 10 years from now. Maddie on a work trip, phone dying, delayed flight, no signal. The kind of normal married life stuff people joke about. Only I wouldn't be joking. I'd be checking clocks, tracking flights, reading tone into every text. I didn't want to live the rest of my life as a full-time lie detector. Whatever I chose, I knew this much. I couldn't choose a future where my sanity depended on believing her again. Ending a marriage is simple paperwork. Ending the part of you that still hopes she'll change. That's the real divorce. 10 days after that coffee shop conversation, I woke up in the little low-hi apartment before sunrise. The room was quiet. No phone lighting up, no second toothbrush by the sink, just me, a rented bed, and the Rockies outlined in the distance through the window. And for the first time since everything blew up, I felt not good, but clear. The question that had been chewing on me, stay or go, had finally worn itself out. The answer was sitting in my chest, heavy but solid. I made coffee, sat at the tiny kitchen table, and stared at my phone for a long minute before dialing. Thomas picked up. "Avery Law." "It's Elias," I said. "Go ahead. File the divorce." He didn't sound surprised. I'll get the paperwork started. When we hung up, I opened my messages and typed to Maddie. I'm moving forward with the divorce. From now on, please talk to Thomas only. I read it twice. No extra lines, no blame, no opening for a debate. Then I hit send, turned the phone off, set it face down on the table. I sat there listening to my own heartbeat in that small, borrowed kitchen. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like survival, like finally admitting the building was too damaged to live in, and walking out before the whole thing collapsed on top of me. That night, after telling her to talk to Thomas from now on, I cooked myself something that barely counted as dinner and tried to pretend my life was normal. Around 9, there was a hard knock at the door. Nobody knew this address except a few people from work and my lawyer. I already knew who it was before I checked the peephole. Maddie. No suit, no armor, hair pulled back badly like she'd done it in the car, eyes red and swollen. She looked wrecked. I opened the door but didn't step aside. You can't end 12 years with a text, she said. No preamble, no hello. Her voice cracked halfway through. I swallowed. I didn't end it with a text. She blinked, thrown. You ended it, I said, when you slept with him. We stood there in the hallway, 3 feet between us, like two different planets pretending they used to share an orbit. She tried again. We can fix this, please. I'm going to counseling. I left the firm. I believe you're sorry, I said. I just don't believe I can unsee what I've seen. Her mouth opened like she was going to say more, but nothing came out. So I did the only thing left that made sense for my sanity. I closed the door, not slamming it, not yelling, just a final, quiet shut. And I had no idea what that simple motion would set in motion next. I leaned my forehead against the door for a few seconds after she was gone, listening for footsteps. Nothing. Just the low hum of the building. I went back to the kitchen table, sat down, and turned my phone back on. A few seconds later, it buzzed. New message from Maddie. I'll be at our spot tomorrow at 7. One last chance to talk. Please come. Our spot. For us, that didn't mean some fancy restaurant. It meant Lookout Mountain Overlook, the place we'd gone on our first real Denver date. Sitting on the hood of my old car, watching the city lights flicker on below us, talking like the whole world was about to open. I read the text once, twice, 10 times. My thumb hovered over the keyboard more than once. I could have typed okay. I could have typed no. Instead, I typed nothing at all. I told myself I was holding the line, that not showing up would finally make her understand there were consequences, that if I softened now, everything we'd done, lawyers, separation, ripping our lives apart, would be for nothing. I thought staying away would teach her a lesson. Looking back, that was the moment the universe went quiet, the kind of quiet right before something breaks. What I didn't realize was I was about to lose the last chance I'd ever have to see her alive. The next evening, I tried to pretend it was just another night. I ordered takeout I barely touched, opened up a project file on my laptop, and stared at lines and numbers that refused to mean anything. My eyes kept drifting to the bottom right corner of the screen. 6:45. She'd said 7. I pictured her up there on Lookout Mountain, arms tucked into her jacket, wind in her hair, city lights spread out like a carpet at her feet. 7:10. My phone buzzed. I'm still here. I set it face down on the table. 7:26. Another buzz. Please, Elias. I read it once, then again. My chest tightened, that old reflex wanting to grab my keys, get in the car, drive like hell, and just show up. This is not about pride, I told myself out loud. It's about dignity. Funny thing about dignity, sometimes it's just fear wearing a nicer jacket, about not going back on what you know is right for you. So I stayed in that little apartment, sat at that cheap table, pretended I was choosing strength, not fear. Around 7:45, the phone went quiet. No more texts. No more calls. I told myself she'd gotten tired, gone home, poured a glass of wine, moved on to whatever came next. I had no idea those would be the last messages she ever sent me. At 8:45, my phone started buzzing again. I saw the screen light up, and my first instinct was to ignore it. I figured it was Maddie, ready to launch another round of "you're throwing us away" because I hadn't shown up. I almost let it ring out. Then I noticed it wasn't her name. Unknown number. Denver area code. I answered. "Yeah, this is Elias." "Elias, it's Caleb." His voice was tight in a way I'd never heard before. "All business, no cushion." "There's been an accident," he said. "It's Maddie." For a second, my brain rejected the words, like they were in a language I didn't speak. "What do you mean, an accident?" "Coming down from Lookout," he said. "Witnesses say she pulled out onto the road, got hit by a delivery truck. They're taking her to UC Health. It's bad." Time did something strange then. The room stayed still, but my head started spinning. 30 minutes ago, I'd been angry at a woman standing on a mountain waiting for me. Now all I could see was twisted metal and flashing lights. In 1 second, all my righteous anger drained out of me and turned into something else entirely. Pure, cold fear. I grabbed my keys and ran for the door, suddenly terrified I was already too late. I don't really remember the drive to UC Health. I remember red lights I probably shouldn't have run. I remember my hands slipping on the steering wheel because they were sweating and freezing at the same time. I remember parking crooked and not fixing it. Inside, everything was too bright, too loud, and too quiet at once. "I'm looking for Maddie Grant," I told the woman at the desk. "My wife. Car accident." She typed, frowned, then picked up a phone. A few minutes later, a doctor in scrubs came over, mid-40s, tired eyes. "I'm Dr. Ramirez," he said. "Your wife sustained significant injuries, internal bleeding, head trauma. She's in surgery right now. Her condition is critical." That word, critical, sat in my chest like a brick. He walked me to a family waiting area and left me there. A few minutes later, a woman in a police uniform approached. Badge, Officer Green. "Mr. Grant, I'm sorry to bother you right now," she said, "but I need to ask a few questions about your wife's state of mind lately." She explained there were no skid marks on the road, no sign she tried to brake or swerve. Witnesses said her car just pulled out in front of the truck. "It might have been distraction," she said carefully. "But some of what we're seeing, it looked..." She hesitated. "It looked intentional." I went to that hospital as a husband. I realized I might have to leave it as her last mistake. The word hit harder than any accusation Maddie had ever thrown at me. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about what she'd done to our marriage. It was about what she might have done to herself, and what part my choices played in pushing her there. There's a special kind of hell in hospital waiting rooms at night. The TV's on, but nobody's watching. The coffee's burned. The clock on the wall doesn't tick loud, but it's all you can hear. I sat there, hands clasped so tight my knuckles hurt, watching the minutes crawl. 11:40, 12:25, 1:52. Other families came and went. Some left with red eyes and shaky smiles, hugging doctors. Others left with the kind of silence you can feel in your bones. I just stayed. I thought about her text. Our spot. One last chance. I thought about my phone face down on the table at 7:45. I thought about Officer Green saying intentional and tried not to throw up. At 3:17 a.m., Dr. Ramirez walked back in. He didn't need to say a word. His face said it, but he spoke anyway. "Mr. Grant," he said quietly, "your wife suffered a massive brain hemorrhage during surgery. We did everything we could. I'm very sorry. She didn't make it." For a second, the room tilted. The chairs, the clock, the fake plant in the corner, all blurred. My wife died in the middle of the night, still legally married to me, but gone from our marriage long before that. I nodded like I understood, like I was civilized and capable, because that's what men like me do. Then I sat back down in that ugly plastic chair, staring at nothing, and realized there was no version of this story where I walked away without blood on my hands. At some point, Dr. Ramirez asked if I wanted to see her. I said yes before my brain had time to protect me. They walked me down a quiet hallway into a small room away from the chaos of the ER. No machines, no monitors, just a single bed under a too bright light. Maddie was lying there on white sheets. Someone had cleaned her up. No blood, no glass, just a faint bruise at her hairline. They'd brushed her hair back, straightened her blanket. If you didn't look too closely, she could have been taking a nap on a Sunday afternoon. I walked up and took her hand. It was cold, heavy, no squeeze back, no unconscious twitch. Just still. All those nights I'd smelled that new perfume on her skin, wondering who she was really wearing it for. Now all I could smell was hospital, antiseptic, plastic, something metallic underneath. I stood there and the only words that came out were, "I'm sorry." I didn't even know what for. Not forgiving her, not going to look out, not seeing how broken she really was. I wasn't sure if I was apologizing for not forgiving her or for ever believing we were unbreakable. Either way, it was too late to matter. The only person who could answer that was already gone. The days after that blurred together into one long list of things that had to be done when you're too numb to do anything. Phone calls, arranging the funeral, choosing a photo for the obituary, answering the same question from a dozen different people. What happened? Her parents flew in and arrived at the hospital wrecked. They knew about the affair, about the pending divorce. Maddie had told them after the Starbucks talk. So now they weren't just grieving their daughter, they were grieving the version of her they thought she was. They still hugged me, still called me son. That almost hurt worse. At the cemetery, I stood beside the grave as they lowered her down. 12 years of my life going into the ground in a polished box. Every good memory tangled up with every lie. Thomas pulled me aside later to talk logistics. House, studio, insurance, accounts. Real-world fallout that doesn't care your chest feels like it's been cored out. At night, I'd go back to the little place in Lohi, lie on that unfamiliar mattress, and listen to cars rushing along I-25 in the distance. Headlights sliding across the ceiling, coming and going. Everyone else got to go back to their routines. Work, school runs, dinner plans. Their lives kept moving. Mine just stopped. And in that stillness, the only thing louder than the traffic was the question of what the hell I was supposed to do next. A few weeks after the funeral, I drove up to Lookout Mountain alone. Same overlook, same drop-off, same view of Denver. Tiny, glittering, distant. The place that used to be our spot before it became just another piece of evidence in a story gone wrong. I sat on the cold metal rail and scrolled back to her last message. One last chance to talk. I must have read that line 1,000 times since she died, trying to bend it into something it wasn't. Some days it felt like a plea. Other days it sounded like a threat. Tonight it just felt sad. I asked myself the question everyone else was too polite to ask me out loud. If I had gone up there that night, would any of this be different? Maybe she wouldn't have pulled out when she did. Maybe there would have been no truck, no surgery, no 3:17 a.m., or maybe it all would have just taken longer. Because the truth is, I wasn't the one driving that car. I wasn't the one texting another man from our bed. I didn't make those choices. She did. And somewhere between the guilt and the grief, I had to admit one simple thing. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. I could mourn her. I could miss who I thought she was. But I was still allowed to choose my own safety. Love is a promise, but self-respect is a boundary. And sometimes only one of them survives. Even if the cost of that choice would haunt me for a very, very long time. Time doesn't heal everything, but it does make the sharpest edges dull enough to carry. Work slowly crept back into focus. The big mixed-use project in Denver finally broke ground. I stood there with a hard hat on, pretending to care about ceremonies and photo ops, thinking, at least I can still build something. I still thought about Maddie. Sometimes it was college Maddie, the girl in the diner, talking big about the future. Sometimes it was ring-on-finger Maddie at Blue Aspen. Sometimes it was the woman in those photos with Derek, or the body on the hospital bed. It was never just one version. It was all of them, layered. One evening, driving home along Spear, I hit a red light. I watched a couple cross in front of me, maybe late 20s, laughing at something on her phone, his hand on the small of her back. A few months earlier, that would have felt like a punch to the gut, a reminder of what I'd lost. This time, it just felt distant, like watching a movie I'd already seen, knowing how quickly the script can flip. The light turned green, and for the first time in a long time, my foot went down on the gas without hesitation. I didn't know exactly where my life was heading next, but I knew this much. I was finally ready to move. If you're a man listening to this, maybe you felt that gut feeling too. That quiet alarm in your chest that says something's off, even when everyone around you is telling you to calm down, be reasonable, be a good husband. Here's what I've learned the hardest way possible. You have to trust the person you marry. But if you blindfold yourself in the name of trust, you're not being loyal. You're just abandoning yourself. Some guys forgive and rebuild. Some guys walk. There isn't one answer that fits all. I'm not here to preach or tell you what real men do. I'm just one man trying to live with what actually happened. There's no clean ending here. No neat moral. No perfect hero or perfect villain. Just two flawed people, a lot of bad choices, and a line I finally chose not to let her cross with me. So I'll leave you with this. If you were me, would you have gone to that overlook? Would you have tried to save a dying marriage? Or walked away like I did? Drop it in the comments. Team stay or team leave, and tell me why. And if you know a man who might be ignoring his own gut feeling right now, share this with him. Hit follow, hit subscribe, and stick around, because there are a lot more stories men like us don't say out loud.